Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Erin Stevenson, and I'm the COO here at Newbook. I would have met many of you at the ARVIC OHCE conference, and it was an absolute pleasure to talk to you, about revenue management, about some of the tips and tools that we had throughout our panel session. And for anyone that didn't get to see our panel session, the reason we're here today is because we had such an overwhelming response from that panel session, wanting to find out, more ways about how you can really focus your business to look at new strategies on revenue management. So what we are really here to talk about today is how we can elevate ourselves and our business on focusing on new ways to increase revenue. Now, revenue management isn't just about looking at our rates year on year and putting a 5% lift on them and setting them and forgetting them. And I hear that so often that that's what so many businesses do. But it really is about, looking at our business strategy, identifying, an operating rhythm, a revenue generating method that really allows us to focus on optimizing and driving additional bookings, focusing on new opportunities through upselling and cross-selling, and really allows us to be smart in our business and ensures that we're focused on the right growth areas. So today we're going to go through some tips and tricks on how you can focus yourselves on generating revenue. And alongside me today, I have Kathleen Walsh here from Advanced Outdoor Solutions. And Kathleen was one of our amazing panelists when we were at ARVIC. And I think had the most attention on her because the way that she was talking about revenue management and some of the tools that she was giving out throughout that session really resonated with a lot of properties. So Kathleen, I'm so excited to have you on the panel with us today. And obviously counting down top 5 tips is important, but do you just want to give us a little bit of background story on yourself and your business and how you got to where you are today?
Sure, happy to, and nice to see a lot of people that I know as well, and some of my team members, so I'm excited to have them on here. So Advanced Outdoor Solutions started after my tenure of 20 years being a chief financial officer for a large developer on the eastern shore of Maryland and Delaware. And one of the things I was tasked with at our Marriott hotels and our RV parks and campgrounds was eking every dollar out of our assets. We were in an area where peak season lasts from May through the end of September. So we had just a few months in the year to make a year's worth of revenue to pay our mortgages and our bills. So I really at that time perfected the art of revenue generation in our parks that we had at that time. And so I've carried that expertise and that ability into Advanced Outdoor and happily do that with our clients across our portfolio.
Amazing. And as I said, you're back by popular demand. You were certainly busy at conference. There's a lot of tips and a lot of opportunity that you can explore with everyone today. So what we're going to do to start off this session is Kathleen has her top 5 tips. And we are going to start at number 5 today, and we are going to count down all the way to her hottest tip at number 1. Now, before we get started, there is a little chat box in the bottom of this Zoom area here. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to jump in there. I've got one of my team members on here helping us with any questions that he might be able to answer. But if not, we certainly will open up to a Q&A at the end of this session today as well. So top 5 tips. Number 5, we're talking about rentals. So Kathleen, what is it about rentals? Explain what that is and how can everyone try to leverage this in their business?
Sure. And when we talk about rentals, I'm talking about ancillary revenue streams. I'm not talking about your lodges or your cabins. Those, of course, will come in point number 1 when we talk about what point number 1 is. But I'm talking about what are those things that we can bring into our campgrounds that add value and can increase our revenue. And they can be as simple as bicycle rentals. A bicycle costs $100, give or take, in the US. I rent bicycles all the time at my parks. They're very low cost to bring into your inventory, and they're a high value profit margin. Mike Gurvich from DC is on here. He and his wife have perfected weddings, having weddings in their campground, and they charge for the tulle and the flowers and the arch. And my very first campground, we had weddings, and so. A tip, if you have weddings, we gave away a wedding in a drawing, but the bride had to allow us to bring in our own photographer and use the collateral in our marketing efforts. So the bride got a free wedding and we got fantastic photos to use in our marketing. So it was a real win-win. Renting out fire pits. If you are in an area or you don't give one to every site or people want propane, we rent propane fire pits out quite often and do really well with that. So some of the lesser known ones are the fire pits. This isn't really a rental, but please consider giving a certain part of your internet for free and then giving paid tiers. I came out of Marriott. It's where I was. And so Marriott, we gave a basic amount free, enough for them to upload their photos to social media, check email. But if they want to Netflix or they want to do business, charge a nominal rate, $8. If people want to sit there at your campground and work, a businessman is going to be able to afford $8. Now, tidbit, if you charge for it, it better work, because that will create a PR nightmare for you. But those are some of the ancillary revenue streams we bring in. Of course, most of you have stores. If you don't, at least have some sort of marketplace, like you see at a Hilton or a Marriott, where you're at least having some chips, sodas, snacks, ice cream, of course. Those bring in, those profit margins are quite large, and it can just be a corner and can bring in some much needed revenue to your park.
Yeah, and I think there's some great tips, Kathleen. And, I hear so many people that say, we've got nowhere to put the bikes, or we've got nowhere, to do a wedding as such. But I really condone you to go and have a look around your park. Is there a pitch of dirt where, maybe you're not selling that bit of dirt every single day, to someone coming in and putting a van on there? And could you turn that into the storage area where you have got your bikes? So you are then making that revenue back by utilizing a little bit of space that doesn't necessarily get rented out every day. I think there's some really great tips there and really good ways to obviously have a look at building out those revenue streams. So
and when it comes to storage, I do want to pipe in on that. My very first park, I had 2 acres of storage. It was so popular, I had to go find another 2 acres. And we really monetized storage and loved it, because during high gas prices, which of course we're in now, we could encourage guests not only to store with us, but also valet. We would valet them back and forth. So we made money storing, we made money valeting, we made money with them camping with us, because if you have their rig, they're staying with you. They're not going to come to your campground typically and pull their rig out and go to another campground. So we had a captive audience. They were saving gas money. I think that year we made $50,000, $55,000 off of storage alone. We charged $3 a day or some flat fee for the month. Very profitable if you can eke out an unused piece of land that you can do RV storage on.
Yeah, great. And Kathleen, I think something we hear as well, I know, especially throughout that onboarding process with properties, is, well, Erin, if we go and get those bikes, how much do we charge them for? How do you come up with that method? What is the way that you sit there and go, I've got this bike, here is how much I'm going to charge, and I know it's going to work?
That's a great question. And we do, and I suggest all of you do, a very detailed, what we call comp set analysis or competitive set analysis. Find the parks in your area that have a like-kind service and see what they're charging. Now, see if it makes sense, because some parks might charge $5 a day. Well, I would never go that low. My minimum, I'm usually at about $35 a day, $50 a day in a high demand location for a bike. Find out what other parks are charging, find out what it would cost for them to go rent that bike from a local bike shop, and then go somewhere in the middle. And at AOS, we always push rate until it pushes back. So we may start out at $50 a day, but if it doesn't rent, I'm working with a client now, their cabanas by their pool are $75 a day and they're not renting. I'm like, too high. The market's already told you, stop. Let's pull back, let's lower the rate, let's get those things renting, and then we'll eke back up. Someone just asked about liabilities for bikes. I work with Irene from Marshall and Sterling. In fact, she gave me a nice little jacket that I'm wearing here, and it's nominal. Make sure they follow the local helmet laws, rent a helmet with the bike, and it's really not going to cause your insurance to go up. If at all, it'll be nominal.
Mm-hmm. And I think, you know, when it does come to those rentals as well, the great thing with that revenue that's coming in is it may not just be a once off per day. Maybe you'll hire those bikes out, you know, in a 2-hour, 3-hour block, and then do another package which releases them for the day as well. So really, you know, do take the time to have a look at what people are doing in the area around you and see if you can start to break it down in an hourly rate, you know, a little package, or even a full day event as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think, yeah, some really great tips there. So tip number 4, talking about additional fees, so extra fees for pets, people, vehicles. Talk us through this, Kathleen.
This was so funny at Arvik, because after the presentation, and if she's on the call, I'm not going to name your name. I don't even know if I remember your name, but a lady cornered me in the back corner and said, "What you just set up there is highway robbery." She said, "You charge $35 a day per pet. That's highway robbery." And I said to her, "Ma'am, think of it this way. They were going to pay a dog sitter that much anyway. And now you're doing them a favor, because for that fee, they're able to bring their pet with them on vacation. So rather than viewing it as highway robbery, view it as this amazing guest experience that you're offering them." And it really is true. I'd much rather take my dog than leave her at home with a pet sitter. So we charge for everything. Some of my team members are on here and they would concur with that. We check the market rate and then we figure out what we can get away with. We charge for extra people over our base fee. We charge for extra vehicles over the number that we feel can fit properly in the park in that space. We charge for extra children. We charge for pets. If you've bought the pet disposal bags recently, you know how expensive they are. They're not cheap. And in an RV park and campground, you tear through cases of those every year. At least charge enough for your pets that you're recouping your cost of those. So it might not look like a revenue, but it's a contract expense. It lowers your expense. So you're providing a good service, charge for a pet. If they're bringing it in their own RV, we go $2 to $5. Alana might be able to say what they are by the river. In a cabin, if you have pet-friendly cabins, and I highly recommend you do, you can go as high as $35 per day per pet in a high demand location. We believe in fees. And the other thing fees do, think about this, it lets you advertise a lower rate. So you can advertise, let's say, a lower average daily rate for a base of 2 people. And most families bring 4.3, according to our research. So your advertised base fee is a loss leader, let's call it that. And then as they add people, pets, and different things, it creeps up. So that's another advantage to going with the fee structure.
Kathleen, I hear so often that people say, you know, I've had the same rate structure for the last 30 years. I've still got a paper card and everyone knows what my rates are. I can't put my rates up because my guests will get upset. That's just crazy. Have you got tips on how you can, move around this and start to kind of get your guests into that method of what you're trying to do to build revenue for your business?
Sure, that's what in AOS we call tail wagging the dog. We refer to that all the time. We don't let the tail wag the dog. You should not devalue your asset, okay? If you're allowing the guests to set your rate instead of the market setting your rate, you're devaluing your asset. And if you have a 3-star or 4-star property, don't price yourself like you're a 1-star property. That's not your comp. If you lose a guest who wants a 1-star price, let them go to the 1-star park. You have an asset that's valuable. I know how hard owner operators work. Oh my gosh. I know how hard you guys work. You want to eke every dime out of that you can. And I've got news for you. Your guests are completely familiar with this practice because they fly, they rent cars, and they know what revenue management is all about. They know what price shielding is all about. So I always say, first of all, parks prepare for this backlash that really never comes. And if you do have that occasional guest that, loses it over yielding rates, I don't really want that person as a guest anyway. I mean, that's my attitude towards it. I'm more about correct rate for a correct product. If I have a 2-star park, you're not going to come into my park and pay 4-star pricing. I'm very realistic about that. But if I have a 5-star park, it's 5-star pricing. And if you want 3-star pricing, I'm not the park for you.
Yeah. And it is really about training your team members to potentially handle any situation that may come up on that front desk when they are coming into that reception area. But you're right. I think we're more scared of the backlash than actually what does come through the door and give us the backlash as well. So, from my side of things, when it comes to setting up your systems and having a look at your rates, just if you're too scared to go up by, $35 in one hit, go 15 and slowly build up that increase for you as well. Do that testing of the market, check out the market, but definitely, have a look at what you could be earning additional on any of those extra line items as well.
Well, and Erin, there's a real misunderstanding of revenue management. Oftentimes we lower rate. The very first thing I told my $70 or $80 a night or day cabana guys is, you're too high. When the we put at Advanced Outdoor, we push until it pushes back. And when it pushes back, we know we've hit a wall. When we see occupancy not at the numbers it should be, we know we've pushed too hard and we pull back. So revenue management is not about raising price. It's about meeting supply and demand at market rate.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Okay, hot tip number 3, we're looking at site types. Talk us through site types.
I love this topic because we'll have clients come on. I have a new client starting January 1, which I haven't even told you about yet, Erin, but it's a pretty big one. And they have two site types. And a lot of you have 2 site types, or 3 if you have cabins. You have back ends, pull-throughs, and cabins. Bad way to go about your approach. If I look at a site plan, I can usually eke out at least 5 or 6 site types where you thought you had 2. If you don't have any neighbors behind you and you're in a quieter area, you're a different site at a different rate. If you're close to the pool, you're pool side rather than back end. If you are in an area that's more advantageous, you're at a different structure. If you're in an area that's less advantageous, you're at a different structure. If you're on a highway and it's really noisy on that row, your rate is lower than someone who's interior, not on a road. So the place I first sort of, I had my aha moment, and Mike knows this property well. It was at Castaways in Ocean City. And I was looking at my waterfront area, and every other row was more highly occupied than the others. And I'm like, what's going on? Same waterfront area, same amenities, same site sizes, all in a cluster, but every other row was higher occupancy. And so I went in my golf cart and I went down to take a look. Every other row had the awning opening towards the water, where the next row, the awning opened towards the interior of the park. Well, guess what? New site type, waterfront, awning towards the water, rate went up. So take a hard look at your site map, because not all sites are created equal. And where you know your guests are demanding, carve out a new site type. New Book will let you do as many as you want. Create a new site type, create a new rate structure, so that you're getting value out of those sites that the guests consider higher value sites.
It is a very good tip, and one that you don't see often happening in parks. I really like that tip, and you are exactly right. There's so many parks that just have those two site types. So definitely take a look around your park, even if you're not a park that has got that waterfront. Having a look if it's closer to the activities area where the kids may be able to play, and the adults might be able to sit back a little bit and watch their kids play in front of them. That is an extra $2-3 for them to have that privilege of being able to do that and not have to walk to the other side of the park to go down to that kind of activity area or kids play area as well.
Well, and that's a good point. That was my second yielded type. The other sites that I saw were renting really heavily were 3 sites in a pretty standard row. So when I went and looked at those, they were right on the playground. So the parents could sit at their site and have a cocktail or a glass of wine and watch the kids play. We had an area that was in a cul-de-sac, and it had cabins, and the parents really liked being there because their kids could safely ride a bike. It wasn't a through road. We raised rate. When there's demand, we raise rate. That's our simple rule. When there's demand, we raise rate. And as Erin said, I hardly ever raise $20. I start creeping up $2, $5, $8. So it's never like, oh my gosh, she's charging me $50 more a night. It's very incremental, but when you multiply that by the number of site nights you sell, it creates an enormous revenue stream. My client here, everybody knows Amir Harpaz. The first year I did revenue management for him, he'll tell you this, so I'm not talking out of turn. I doubled his revenue. He went from $500,000 to $1 million just by things like this.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. So one of my favorite topics next is tip number 2, I should say. We're nearly at number 1, but tip number 2 is surrounding activities. So this is an absolute favorite of mine. I'm going to let you go first, Kathleen. But what are some of those tips on how you can, obviously increase revenue through activities in the property?
Well, let me start by saying a lot of our activities are included with your stay. So if we're doing nominal things that don't, nominal cost items like bingo or game night or volleyball at the pool, plenty of activities are included at no charge. But when we want to up our game and make some money from activities, one of the highest grossing activities we've ever done at a campground, believe it or not, is airbrush tattoos. We brought an airbrush tattoo machine at what's that big show? IAPA. IAPA follows Arvik. And there were some airbrush tattoo kits, and it was $6,000. We thought, we'll give it a try and see how it goes. We would set it up 2 times a day in a different location, advertise it. We blew it out of the water with those things. The kids love them. In fact, the lines were so long that we had to add a second person to do them. And you didn't have to be skilled. It's a stencil that you put on their arm and you just airbrush inside of it. It's like putting on airbrush makeup. And I think our cost of goods for a tattoo was like 30 cents. And the small ones we sold for $8, the large ones 12, and I think the extra large ones were like 18. And our cost of good was 33 cents. Activities like ceramics, you can charge for ceramics. So if your ceramic teapot cost you $3, charge $8 for it. As everyone knows in campgrounds, tie-dye shirts or tie-dyeing is one of the most popular activities we can do. It was free, but oftentimes they'd forget to bring a white t-shirt. So we sold those in the store. So if you wanted to do free tie-dye, you still had to go buy one of our white t-shirts in the store. So those activities not only really generate just a fantastic guest experience. Candy bar bingo, a lot of you do that. They have to go buy the candy bar from us to throw it onto the table for bingo. So even though bingo is free, the candy bar is not. So those are some of the things that we did. We were at the beach, so we did scopes. And if you don't live at the beach, you don't know what a scope is. But it's those little telescope things that you put a picture inside of and it acts as a keychain. We did those and made a lot of money off those. So if you've never been to IAPA, do yourselves a favor and go to that show one year. It has a lot of great ideas there.
That's great. And, you know, as I mentioned at the start, activities is one of the biggest generating tools I think you can actually use within your park. And you're exactly right. Whether you're charging $5 for a t-shirt and another $5 to do the tie-dye, you know, that could be $6 that you didn't have today, that you didn't have yesterday, that you've now got today from one child. And if you're doing, you know, 20, 30, 40 children in a day, plus hiring out, you know, 2 bikes in that day as well, there's a bunch of additional revenue that you really weren't even looking at, you know, before putting in something like this. But I think when it does come down to activities as well, it doesn't always have to be, as you mentioned before, a charged event. You know, kids face painting, a movie night within the park, it could all be free. But what that is also doing is creating a guest experience. This is really enhancing that guest experience. And at the end of the day, the better time those kids have within your park, the more relaxed those adults are feeling, you're going to start to see that as returned revenue. So they are going to start to come back to your property because they had a great guest experience. So if you're not charging, you know, it's still a fantastic way to get some of that revenue back in and have them coming back year on year as that family holiday with you.
Well, and one of the biggest money makers I've ever put in any park was a bar right off of a kid's play area. It sounds like you're a terrible parent. Go play so I can drink. And it was sort of that way, I hate to say. We opened up a little tiki bar, and in that state, you had to be 21 or over to come drink. And of course, we're like, well, we're never going to get the parents because what are the kids going to do? So we put in an extra special, not just a run-of-the-mill play area, but a really nice play area right off the bar. So the parents could sit and drink at the bar and enjoy themselves, and the kids were occupied in the play area. So even though the play area didn't cost money to use, we were making money over on the bar side. And so like the movie night, you might not make money on the movie, but you can make money on the popcorn, sodas, and ice cream that you sell at the movie. So taking that free amenity and figuring out how to make money off of it is, man, it can be a big money maker. $500,000 at that little bar we made a year.
And it is. It's just sitting back and taking a look at your business and sparking some of these ideas you popped in today and really having a look to see, what can I now increase? What can I now do? And I think the biggest thing that the people miss is investing time into this is so important. You know, there's no point in anyone being on this call today and going, wow, they're fantastic ideas. And in a year's time, when we're back at ARVIC, you know, we talk and we say, what did you implement? And you say, well, nothing, I ran out of time. Well, time, you've got to make sure you're investing the time to have a look at your park and see what you can do with some of these ideas.
Erin, I'm shocked at people in the industry, and I guess it's because they're busy. They don't know how much money they're making. I might say to them, what's your break even on a site night? Like, you know, if you rent it for X or lower, you're losing money. They don't know that number. What happens to your ADR on weekends? Do you have minimum lengths of stay in place? A lot of owner operators are so busy, they don't know the answer to these simple questions. And for me as an accountant, that's just foreign to me. I know that $14 is my break even at most of my parks. If I rent it for $15, I've made $1. So I know what I can do financially. So if you can't implement everything, at least start with a couple things.
Exactly. One at a time. Have a plan. Each quarter, work on one new plan. This quarter, we're going to work on bikes. Next quarter, we're going to work on activities. And by the end of the year, you've implemented 4 new revenue streams that you didn't have at the start. And now you can really start to track that revenue. Exactly right. Yeah. Kathleen, a question has come through, and I'm not sure if you're going to be able to answer this, but Alicia has asked around what are the benefits of adding in, whether it be water features or play structures, splash pads, lazy rivers, water parks, any kind of commentary on that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And actually the bar revenue came from a Whibbit water park. So we put some water-based, we couldn't do a lot because our low tide was really low. If you're looking at a product like Whibbit, they will tell you the minimum depth you need to use their products, but we put in water features right off the bar. However, if you don't have a bar or a bar is not something that you're in favor of, those will raise your average daily rate. Okay, when you add those, there's a value to your average daily rate. So for instance, I tell my clients, if you put in a pool, I'm going to be able to raise your average daily rate at least $10 a night across the board. If you put in a splash pad, I'm going to be able to raise your average daily rate about the same. So even though you might not be charging for that amenity, you really are, because you're going to command a higher average daily rate than when you did not have that. As long as you're marketing it properly, they need to know you have it. They need to see well photographed pictures of it. They need to see kids playing in it, and you will be able to increase your average daily rate.
Great commentary there. So Kathleen, we are down to tip number 1. So your biggest tip of all time on how everyone can really try to leverage, revenue in the business. Talk me through it. Managing rates sounds so simple, but let's start with the basics.
And yet hardly anyone does it.
Exactly. Let's start with the basics and work our way through this one. So managing rate is your biggest tip.
It is, and we do it religiously here, day in, day out, day in. In fact, here's my little cheat sheet from a comp that was silly enough to put a paper rate sheet out on their desk, so I snatched it. First of all, paper rate sheets are a big no-no. Alana's on, she knows. I preach on this constantly. I just walked into one of my new parks in California, and there was a paper rate sheet. I took it, I tore it up. I didn't do it obnoxiously, but I just said to the staff, we don't do those. So managing revenue, there's a real misnomer about that in the industry. People think if you have software and it randomly or by design raises rate at a certain occupancy structure, that's revenue management. I'm going to tell you that's better than nothing. But I'm also going to tell you that's not revenue management. Aaron used the phrase set it and forget it earlier. We never do that at Advanced Outdoor. We monitor rate, pickup, demand, occupancy, average daily rate, minimum length of stay constantly. Because if you don't, you're leaving real dollars on the table. So if you would have a peek into my back end new book, you would see, of course, Friday and Saturday might be my higher rates. Sunday, I might go down a little, but not really, because I get a lot of 3-night weekends. Monday, I might go down a little bit more, but not a lot, because I still get some long weekends. Tuesday and Wednesday, I go lower because those are my off days. But Thursday, I start creeping back up again because they're coming in for the weekend. I monitor minimum lengths of stay, and I shorten them the closer we get to peak season. So for instance, at one of my high demand parks in New York, I put on a 5-night minimum this far out. They don't open until May. And people are like, oh my gosh, you're never going to get any bookings with that many nights. The owners even said that to me. So I do what I always do. I rely on the numbers, not feeling or emotion. And I printed out that not only was our occupancy higher for the coming year, but we were already $60,000 to the good for the coming year because we weren't allowing what I call cherry picking. Oh, I just went Friday and Saturday. Oh, I just went Thursday and Friday. No. At Castaways, which Sean bought, but it was my first park, so I refer to it a lot. You had a 7-night minimum until maybe 3 months before arrival. And then we would go to 5, then we would go to 3, and I don't think we ever moved off of 3. If we had a night available because of a break in longer reservations, you could book that. But we just held strict minimums because historically we knew that's what we needed to do to make the most money. At our parks, you must look at new book to quote rate. And I love the new book quote feature. Not enough people use it. I think it's absolute gold because all I have to do is be on the phone and, hi, Mrs. Jones, when would you like to come? Well, I'd like to come July 2nd and stay to July 10th. Great, let me see what I have available for you. I hit the little cog, all of my rates populate, and I can then upsell, which I love. Oh, we have a back-end site that would be $700 for your entire stay, but you know, for $100 more, I have a fantastic pull-through. May I go ahead and book that for you? Selling, that's what it's all about. And that quote screen is really great for being able to sell. If you don't do anything else, start using that feature in New Book. I've used every system in this industry, bar none, and they have the best revenue management rate structuring software in the industry. That rates chart is where I live. Click, 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 change, shave, minimum length of stay, drop minimum length. You can do everything within that one screen to take your revenue to the next level.
So Kathleen, talking about watching your minimum stays, always looking at your rates, adjusting where required. Do you do anything like late checkouts, stay extensions, any, automatic upsells to different category types to release back some of those cheaper rooms?
We do a lot of, we do early check-in and early and late checkout fees, especially if we're at a park like the beach where they want to eke out an extra half day at the beach. We'll say pull off site, go to storage, and we will charge you a flat fee of say $25. So that's a big revenue maker if people want to stay longer. When we see that maybe there's a Thursday open when someone's coming in for a weekend, a lot of times our GMs will call that person and say, hey, if you want to beat the Friday traffic and come in a night earlier, we'll book you that night at 50% off. So filling that night that wouldn't have been filled, but yet, still know your break even. That's important. Know your break even because you don't want to sell it at a loss. But selling that night when you maybe wouldn't have sold it. Releasing your minimum lengths of stay. This is complicated and I won't get into the details of it. Know your booking window, know how far out people are booking when they come to you. And if your booking window is 7 nights and at 5 nights left to a big event, you're not seeing the occupancy you want, release your minimum lengths of stay, because you've passed your booking window. Knowing your booking window is key also to managing your payroll. One of my clients, I was just going over his budget and he was saying, you're too heavy in January. You have too many people in January. We're not even open. So I pulled up the bookings lead time report from New Book and I said, all these people coming in July booked in January. So you got to staff in January or they're going to get a busy signal for their July booking. So you have to pay attention to your booking window. Booking window is something that a lot of softwares don't track, and it's absolutely a key piece to revenue management. It's a must-have piece to revenue management.
Absolutely. Now, Kathleen, I am conscious of time, and I know that you and I could talk about this for hours on end. We could tips and tricks all day, every day. But I want to open it up to everyone as well and see if there is any further questions that have come through. You can unmute yourselves and ask a question live as well. So if anyone does want to ask any questions, please do. There is one in the chat that I will pop us through first. And that has come through from Tyler. So he was asking in regards to the comp set analysis, is there a type of organisation that offers those services to the outdoor industry?
Well, that's really interesting. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, that's really interesting because I came from Marriott hotels and we had it fed into our inbox all the time. We don't have that advantage in the outdoor hospitality world. So internally, we really track it down. We monitor websites of our competitors. We call. We had to do a lot of calling this week because we were working on a comp set analysis for someone in North Carolina. We had to call the surrounding parks and say, hey, if I were to come in for a month, what is your rate? And, you know, then they'll tell you. So is there an easy way in this space to get it? No. But is it easier than it used to be? Yes, because you can do a lot of your own analysis. When you're doing comp set analysis, do not comp yourself against a park that's not like kind. If you're a 2-star, your comp is not the 5-star next door. Your comp is the 2-star down the street. If you're a 5-star, your comp is not the 2-star next door. Your comp is another 5-star. So do not comp yourself against non-comps. It would be like a Motel 6 comping themselves against a Waldorf Astoria. You don't want to do that.
Great response there. Another question that's come through is, Kathleen, what are your thoughts about guests getting first dibs on a certain type? You know, they've just inherited a park and they've got guests that are set in stone that is where they want to stay year on year. What's your commentary on that?
Okay, so we don't do that, but we also don't want really bad PR. So if I were going into a park like these folks are, it's a new park, you're inheriting these, I would say, okay, as a general rule in the future, we are not going to guarantee a particular site, but we will do it for you if you stay 7 nights or more. So I would do a give and take. I would attach something that's advantageous to me. And then if they say, well, I can only stay 3 nights, I'm sorry, we're only guaranteeing that site type to 7 nights or more at this time. So you're not a jerk, but you're also looking out for your own interest. And I do that with a lot of premium sites. Premium sites, you have to stay X number of nights or more if you want to book them at all. So that's how I would handle that. I would say, oh, like when people say to me, do you take, I won't say the word of the popular discount program in our space, but people will say to me, do you take blank, blank discount? And I say, instead of saying no, I say, oh, we have a great discount. If you stay 6 nights or more, you get a night free. Never lead with your negative foot. You don't want to lead with your negative foot. You want to lead with, oh yeah, we absolutely will guarantee that site to you. 7 nights or more, done deal.
Right. And one that's just come through the chat as well, which is another one I was going to call out, thanks Courtney, with what about charging for site selection? So if you want to come and stay on this site again next year, there's an extra $3 or $5 fee for you to actually come and stay on this site.
Oh, this is one of my favorite subjects. I hate site selection lock fees. And I'll tell you why. I hate them. I never use them. And my clients have argued with me on this. And I'm like, they say, but we see it on the P&L, it makes money. What you don't see on the P&L is the number of people you had to turn away because you allowed that site lock. So if I have a 10-night opening and I have a 3-night opening, and the 3-night guy wants my 10-night spot, and I guarantee him that for some absurd low, even if let's say it's $75, You give him 3 nights in my 10 site slot for $75, and my 10 night guy calls to book. Sorry, I don't have a space for you because I just made woohoo $75 when I could have had a 10 night booking. The only way site lock fees make sense is if you charge average daily rate for the nights you lock. That's the only way they make sense. And people will say, well, I see the revenue on my P&L. You're not tracking what you lost, because I guarantee you, you're losing money. If hotels don't do it, why should we? Have you ever called a hotel and said, I want room 217? That's the room I want, and I'm not coming unless I get that room. No, you say, I want a king with a sleep sofa. They don't tell you the number until you get your key at check-in. That's what we should implement. Any other way, it's costing you money.
Good feedback, good feedback. And I think, you know, maybe even looking at, if you are going to be doing the site lock fees, doing it in your off-peak period. So doing it in the period where you have got plenty of space, you do have plenty of cabins to sell. That is additional revenue in those off-peak periods, rather than blocking out those big spots in those high periods. You're exactly right.
Now, the only people I will lock it for, and I don't charge them, are groups of X or more. Figure out what your group is. For us, it was always 10 or more. If you're bringing 10 or more, I will put you in the same location and I will not move you. And I don't charge for that, because that's bad business for a group that size. So I don't charge group site lock fees. But if Joe Blow, who's been coming forever, wants that site and wants to pick, you know, a 3-night stay, we just don't do that.
Beautiful. And I think we're just about up with time, but there's one more question that I'd love to hear your response on this one as well. So we've had a question come through saying, what are your thoughts about seasonals? They pay very little compared to overnight guests, but they're guaranteed a chunk of change. So what are your thoughts on that?
You know, people will probably be surprised by my answer. It depends on your market. Some of my parks are a seasonal market, and they should have never been a seasonal. They're a seasonal park in a transient market. They should have never been set up that way. Sometimes they're a transient park in what might be a more seasonal market. So where I am, Southwest Florida is a great example. Southwest Florida, you might as well know you need to have 6-month rates in place.
Going to get Canadians, or, you know, you're going to get 6-month stays from snowbirds. So for me to have a Fort Myers park and say I'm only doing daily rate, that wouldn't work. So know your market, but we keep a very tight leash on seasonals. You're not allowed to look like you live like a squatter. You're not allowed to have grandma, grandpa, cousin Henry, his 3 kids. You have to say who's going to be there, pay for extra people. You always pay for your utilities, and you don't run us. We set the rules for you. So seasonals in a seasonal area make sense. Annuals almost never make sense. If you're doing annuals, that almost never makes sense. I just visited 2 properties beachfront in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, that are doing annual leases. And the very first line in my audit report to them is, stop it now. Because it's a transient market and they should be making huge daily rate there. Look at your market. If you should not be a seasonal market, start transitioning. Mike, I don't know if you knew this, but the very first year I took over Castaways, they had 350 seasonals. By year 4, we had 2.
Wow.
Total transient market, parks run all wrong. We've gone into parks and completely flipped the script. We've made a lot of enemies. Seasonals don't like when you flip the script, but if it makes sense for our clients, we do it. Yeah. And then the client comes out smelling like a rose. It's me that's the BITCH.
I think, you know, the point that you had earlier, this is your business. You need to take control of your business. And yes, it might annoy some of those guests that have been coming for many, many years, whether you're putting up a rate, you're changing your market, you're adding additional things in that they may not want to be near, but it is your business. So invest time back into your business. As I said, start with an hour a week, you know, build that up over time, look at your business and really make sure that you're starting to make an impact on some of these things. So just to recap, the top 5 tips from Kathleen Walsh was surrounding rentals. So have a look at what new rentals, ancillary rentals you could be doing in your property. Top tip number 4, extra fees. So how can you charge extra fees on pets, vehicles, and additional occupants? Site types, sit back and take a look at your park. Make sure you've got the right site type set up. An extra $2, $3 on splitting up different areas of your park can really make a difference. Second tip, activities, whether it's free, whether you're going to charge for that popcorn or that candy that's going to go to that bingo game, see what you can charge for there. And then lastly, manage your rates correctly. Take time to understand your rates and make sure that you are managing them full time. So Kathleen, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to talk to everyone again. It was probably one of the biggest responses that we had coming out of ARVIC, was just to hear more insights from you on how you obviously boost revenue. To everyone that joined today, we thank you so much. This is recorded, so we will be sending it out to you as well. To Lauren, who's doing hairdressing right now in front of all of us, you have done incredible at the same time of multitasking. But again, thank you, everyone. If you've got any further questions, myself or Kathleen, please feel free to email through to New Book and we'll get those questions and answers back from Kathleen too. But I appreciate you all taking the time today to join us.